Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, warns there's a 48% chance the US will enter a recession within the next year. That's not just a statistic, it's a potential disaster for millions. Recessions aren't just numbers, they mean empty cupboards, eviction notices, and families losing their homes. Nearly half the country faces a coin toss between job loss and homelessness. This isn't a distant threat, it's the reality for those already living on the edge. Tonight, we'll look beyond the headlines to reveal the 10 groups most at risk of homelessness if the economy crashes. Because this crisis could hit anyone, your neighbors, your friends, even your own family. Single parents and young families are already walking a financial tightrope, balancing every dollar just to get by. Every unexpected expense feels like a crisis, and there's little room for error in their budgets. Imagine Sarah, a single mom, suddenly facing a 20% rent hike. No negotiation, just a notice and the threat of eviction hanging over her head. For families like hers, there's no safety net, just mounting anxiety. Childcare alone can swallow a third of her income, leaving almost nothing for emergencies, savings, or even basic needs. Every month is a struggle to make ends meet, and any setback can push them over the edge. A recession doesn't just squeeze their budgets, it can wipe them out completely, erasing any progress they've made and forcing them to make impossible choices. The choice becomes impossible: pay rent or buy food. There's no room for both, and sacrifices are made daily just to keep the lights on. This isn't about poor planning or bad decisions. It's a system stacked against families with no universal childcare, no paid leave, and limited support for those who need it most. Housing instability traumatizes children, disrupting their education, friendships, and sense of security. The stress follows them everywhere, affecting their ability to learn and grow. When we fail these parents, we fail their kids and our future. The impact ripples through generations, making it harder for families to break the cycle of poverty. So when you hear the word recession, don't just think of numbers on a screen. Think of families forced to pack up their lives, children leaving behind their homes, schools, and friends. These are real people, facing impossible odds every single day. Their struggles are not just statistics. They are stories of resilience, hope, and the urgent need for change. Seniors in America were promised a dignified retirement, a time to rest and enjoy the fruits of their lifelong labor, surrounded by family and the comfort of familiar communities. But for far too many, that promise has been broken, leaving them facing uncertainty and hardship instead of peace. Fixed incomes simply can't keep up with the relentless rise in rents, utilities, and especially medical costs, which seem to climb higher every year. The average Social Security check barely covers even the most basic needs: food, shelter, and medicine, let alone unexpected emergencies or the rising cost of living. Seniors are being priced out of the communities they've called home for decades, forced to make impossible choices between buying medication or putting food on the table. Waiting lists for affordable senior housing stretch for years, leaving many with nowhere to turn and little hope for relief. Many face the terrifying prospect of homelessness, a virtual death sentence for those already struggling with health issues or limited mobility. A recession or economic downturn will only make this crisis worse, pushing even more elders onto the streets and into desperate situations. The image of a grandparent sleeping on a park bench, exposed to the elements, should be unthinkable in a country as wealthy as ours. Instead, it's becoming heartbreakingly common, and it stands as a national disgrace, a failure of our collective responsibility. We owe our elders so much more than fear and uncertainty in their final years. They deserve dignity, security, and the peace they were promised. Veterans risked everything for their country, leaving behind families, comfort, and safety to serve. But too often, when they return home, they find themselves alone, facing a world that seems to have moved on without them, and a system that offers little support. Many veterans struggle with invisible wounds like PTSD, physical injuries, and the overwhelming maze of paperwork and bureaucracy at the VA. The process to get help can be long, confusing, and discouraging, leaving many feeling abandoned. The jobs they're trained for, construction, manufacturing, logistics, are often the first to disappear in a recession. Suddenly, the skills that were once essential to national security are no longer valued in the civilian workforce. Skills that were vital in the military, leadership, discipline, teamwork, are dismissed as non-essential in civilian life, making it even harder for veterans to find meaningful work and purpose. As a result, veterans make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population, struggling to find stable housing and support. On any given night, tens of thousands of veterans sleep on the very streets they once defended, their service and sacrifice too often forgotten. This isn't just a policy failure, it's a moral one. We are failing those who risked everything for us. With every economic downturn, a recession will push even more veterans to the margins, making their struggles even more invisible. Support our troops must be more than a slogan. It should be a real, ongoing commitment to their well-being, one that we are currently failing to keep. We owe our veterans more than empty promises. We owe them action, respect, and a future worthy of their sacrifice. Youth aging out of foster care face a cliff, not a transition. At 18 or 21, they're suddenly on their own. No family, no safety net. Within 2 years, over a quarter will experience homelessness. A recession erases what few opportunities they have. Jobs disappear, affordable housing vanishes. The state, acting as parent, abandons them at adulthood. We could offer transitional housing, mentorship, and support until age 25, but we don't. Instead, we create a cycle of poverty and homelessness that's nearly impossible to escape. These young people aren't just statistics, they're the children the system forgot. When the next economic storm hits, they'll be among the first swept away. We can do better, if we choose to. For Black and Indigenous communities, homelessness risk is rooted in centuries of systemic inequality. Redlining, discriminatory lending, and exclusion from wealth building have created a massive racial wealth gap. The median white family has nearly 8 times the wealth of the median Black family. Black Americans are 13% of the population, but nearly 40% of the homeless. A recession doesn't create this crisis, it exposes and deepens it. These communities are more likely to work in jobs that vanish first and rent homes with little protection. Ignoring race in this conversation is willful blindness. The fight against homelessness must also be a fight for racial justice. Until we address these roots, solutions will be temporary at best. Immigrants and migrant workers are essential to our economy, yet remain invisible and unprotected. Many work grueling jobs for low pay with no benefits or safety net. They pay taxes but are often ineligible for the services their labor funds. A recession hits them first, jobs disappear, and eviction follows quickly. Undocumented workers can't access unemployment or housing aid and fear seeking help. Even documented immigrants face language barriers and complex bureaucracy. We rely on their work, but deny them dignity and protection. When the economy crashes, they're left to pick up the pieces, alone. Their struggle is a stark reminder of our national hypocrisy. For people with disabilities or chronic illness, every day is a struggle to afford both medicine and shelter. SSDI payments are far below what's needed for accessible housing. A recession means even fewer jobs and more discrimination in hiring. Losing a job often means losing health insurance, a lifeline for many. The shortage of affordable, accessible housing is dire. During downturns, funding for these resources is often the first cut. This system punishes people for being sick or disabled, trapping them in a cycle of poverty and declining health. Housing instability makes managing illness nearly impossible. When we force people to choose between medicine and shelter, we fail as a society. For those leaving prison, freedom often means entering a new kind of prison, one of barriers and exclusion. Criminal records block access to jobs and housing, making homelessness almost inevitable. Public housing bans and job application checkboxes keep people locked out. Without stable housing, the risk of returning to prison skyrockets. A recession makes this cycle even harsher. More competition, fewer opportunities. We spend billions on incarceration but little on helping people rebuild. This isn't just unjust, it's fiscally reckless. If we believe in second chances, we must tear down these barriers. Otherwise, a prison sentence becomes a life sentence of homelessness. Low-wage workers are the backbone of our economy, yet can't afford a basic apartment in any state. They work long hours, but stagnant wages and soaring rents keep them on the edge. One unexpected expense, a car repair, a sick child, can mean eviction. A recession wipes out their jobs first, leaving no cushion. Many are forced into overcrowded, unsafe housing or impossible commutes. This isn't about lack of effort, it's about a system that devalues work. Corporate profits soar while workers struggle to survive. When the next recession hits, these workers will pay the highest price. Their struggle is a stark indictment of our economic priorities. Most American families now live paycheck to paycheck. Teachers, nurses, small business owners. They look stable, but their finances are a house of cards. Wages stagnate while costs for housing, healthcare, and education explode. Debt piles up, and one job loss can bring everything crashing down. Nearly 60% of Americans have no meaningful savings. A recession turns vulnerability into crisis. Foreclosures, repossessions, and homelessness. The line between middle class and homelessness is now razor thin. The next downturn could see a wave of homelessness unlike anything since the Great Depression. It won't just be the marginalized, it could be any of us. The fragility is now at the very center of American life. This isn't just about economics, it's about our priorities as a nation. America has the resources to ensure everyone has a safe place to sleep. We could build affordable housing, expand assistance, and raise wages, but we lack the political will. The groups we've discussed are the canaries in the coal mine. Their struggles preview a potential nationwide catastrophe. The real measure of a recession is how many are forced to sleep outside. Until we fix the foundation, this house we call a nation will keep shaking.